Welcome back. It's the Better Learning Podcast. We are talking the movie Hoosiers today. So my name's Kevin Stoller, and our guest today is Dr. Deb Kerr. Deb, how are you?
Good day. How we all doing out there? Just so excited to be here. Basketball is one of my passions as well as a former collegiate athlete and basketball coach myself. So there's a lot of parallel themes that I relate to every day of my life in this movie for sure.
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing why people pick the movie. So hearing that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes, it is, but I'm a transplant from the west side of Chicago, as I was talking to Kevin. And I grew up just right outside the city and, watching the Chicago Bulls win, the NBA finals for many years in a row, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all of them. And then I went to college in Valparaiso University in Indiana. So that's when it really hit me that
Yes.
I became a Hoosier because of my college that I attended.
That is awesome. Were you at Valpo the same time as like Bryce Drew and that, or
Oh,
that
I
was
missed him
you
and his
missed that, didn't
dad.
you?
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
missed him and his dad. He was amazing. But I have the little ball, that says Sweet 16 on my shelf at
that's
home.
cool.
So,
That's cool. Yeah. I went to, so I'm like you, grew up Chicago. So basketball, Hoosiers was like a huge component,
mhm.
and then my family, I have three brothers. So two of us went to Miami University in Ohio, and then two of them went to Indiana University.
Nice.
So there's that whole Indiana. I mean, there's a lot of parallels to like, a
Mhm.
little bit of Bobby Knight and Coach Dale
Oh, yeah.
here. And so it was always, this was a classic that was on our TV all the
Mhm.
time growing up.
So,
Well, this is a timely movie to talk about. We just finished
mhm.
up the NBA finals
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
and Indiana, like at the pro level, has had this like
Mhm.
resurgence of basketball with the Pacers. And they didn't pull it off in Game 7, but watching like that city and that state rally around,
Mhm.
between that and with Caitlin Clark being playing with the Indiana Fever now, I feel like it's like back to those glory days of where
Mhm.
just the whole community rallies around basketball.
Yeah, and it made me think of the movie Hoosiers because Indiana was just making the best comeback they could, even out without their star player,
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton, and wow, it was just incredible to see. And they hadn't won the NBA championship in many many years,
Yeah.
same as Oklahoma City. So it's just sports kind of it tells such a story about everyone's lives and through competition and through the championship. And so it just reminded me a lot of Coach Dale and what he tried to do with his players in good old Hickory, Indiana. Who
I
would have
know.
known?
All right, so let's talk movie here. Obviously, this is a movie that came out. What was the year that it came out? It came out in,
Mm,
had to be 80s. I was going to
1986.
say
Yeah,
mid to late.
1986. Yeah.
Got a good IMDb. I always look at the
Mm-hmm.
IMDb. So it was
Mm-hmm.
86. It's a 7.4, which I would say if it's over a 7, that's usually pretty good. It's really hard to get over an 8 on IMDb. So really good reviews on there, and but it was kind of like one set in the early 50s. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
1951 when when
Yes.
Coach Dale first
Mm-hmm.
drives into town, and that opening scene, the music, just everything
Mm-hmm.
about that just sets up that era and the location of just like barns, just with hoops out and just everyone
The
that
classic
with hoops.
cars and
Yeah, the class. Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah. And of course, who doesn't recruit their friend to coach at their high school,
Right.
right? I mean, that's how a lot of coaches, get their starter position, going
Yeah.
back to their own high school or a former coach that's now a leader. So I thought that was really relevant too. We try to recruit people who are going to be good for our kids. So it was great to see that even though everyone has a little bit of a checkered past, he was hired and, he supported him
Yeah.
throughout the whole series.
Yep. Yeah. After it sounded like 20 years or so, they hadn't really been in communication.
Right,
And yeah,
right.
yeah.
And they didn't even have social media back then. So,
Well, I know that was one of the things actually I was going to save it to the iPhone effect category,
yeah,
but
yes.
he just shows up. They had no
Right.
idea
Like,
like when he was coming. Like like he got the phone call and then he just
yeah.
drove there and showed
Hmm.
up and they had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I didn't think you'd be here that soon."
Hmm. Surprise.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it also shows that, he was a teacher at heart. He wanted to do well by his kids, and he wanted all of the students to work very hard. All his scholar athletes, his players, he demanded discipline. And they hadn't had a lot of discipline in the past with their previous coaches. So that was a struggle. And he wanted his team to play the way he told them. I'm not sure a lot of us would get away with that, coaching the kids from that perspective. You need to do what I say, okay, show me why this is important. So making them pass the ball 4 times as a player, that would have been really difficult for me as a point guard. I got to pass the ball 4 times before I can shoot.
What
What are
position
you
did you play?
talking? I played point guard and small forward.
Okay.
So,
Oh, that's an interesting combo
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm a girl of Title IX. So athletics and sports had just come into its own. There were no scholarships for me at Valpo, unlike my male counterparts. However, they did respect the women's program, and we were able to, travel and have nice uniforms and all the other things that you would expect of a women's basketball team. No, it was a great experience there, and we needed to build the program up. And that's what Coach Dale had to do too. He had to build his kids up and show that they were respectable, and that they would follow his directions.
Yeah, he had a few quotes in there that that I just loved around just the
Hmm.
team,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah,
And he might not have said it to the kids very often, but he did show them that he cared enough to be there for them, and no matter what, and to build the kids up who maybe had not been as exposed to as much opportunity to play in a very high level. I think it's like a David and Goliath story. You always root for the underdog, and they were the underdog throughout this whole movie and the playoffs, and people didn't believe in them, and they were subjected to lots of challenges along the way. But I just think that the smallest school to ever win the Indiana championship,
yeah.
and it just speaks volumes.
I think we can go into some award categories and go through there. All right, so the
Yeah.
first one is the John Keating Award around like who's the
Yeah.
best educator, teacher, mentor character in here? Is it Coach?
I couldn't think of anyone else, really. I mean, he just stood out right away because he took charge. He came in right away and just tried to recognize what those kids needed and believed in them from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean the only other one is could you say Barbara Hershey's Myrna's role? I mean she clearly cared a lot in there and was kind of protecting people, especially Jimmy, in there of not
Yes.
wanting, like not wanting him to go down the wrong path.
Hmm.
But yeah, I kept coming back to Coach. So
Hmm.
it's just like a different philosophy of like you're
Hmm.
either like on this track or you're out.
Right.
And yeah, and you don't really think about like, well, those, the ones that were out, what did happen to those guys?
Hmm. Yep. But I think this situation could exist and has with other. I think about the women's NBA and the rise of the league presence and the skill level, and people like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, and where they've taken the level of play. And those coaches have believed in those women and have persevered and been very resilient because they didn't always have the same opportunities that the men's programs have had. As you look at the different universities with Don Stanley and,
Right.
all of those folks. So, yeah, I think there's just a lot of things that are depicting real life in this movie, even though it was made, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. All right, so I need to pull in some personal connections into Indiana here too. I'm not sure where else to do it, so I'm just going to bring it up right now. But my high school, we had an amazing women's basketball team, like amazing, and it was like everyone went to it.
Hmm.
And so they won state a couple of years in a row in Illinois. So I went to Stevenson, Deb.
Yes. Oh, yes. I know exactly where that
Yeah,
is.
so it's
Yes.
in northwest
Yep.
suburbs.
Adley Stevenson's
Yeah,
high school.
and but we had some amazing players,
Oh, yeah.
including the Ketching sisters,
Can't.
Tamika Ketchings,
Yes.
who went on to
And
play at
yeah.
Indiana, and
Mm-hmm.
they played in the Olympics a bunch, became and joined the Hall of it's in the Hall of Fame now for women's
Yeah.
basketball,
Yeah.
and yeah, and just yeah, especially seeing the WNBA kind of like taking off
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more. It's just cool to see that because it's yeah, to get anything like that, kind of the
Mm-hmm.
point here of like to build a team and to build a moment. It just sometimes it just takes time um,
Mm-hmm.
for that to happen.
I think that's the increase in the relevance of the women's game is like Hoosiers. It's you get all this excitement, you get all these people to pack the gym on a Friday and a Saturday night because there's really nothing else to do in those towns but cheer on the girls in their teams. I think it's just been incredible the cascading effect that the women's NBA has had on not just on the collegiate programs, but now there's more women sportscasters in
Right.
interviewing in whether it was the men's NBA finals or the women's. So that was really fun for me to see as a girl of Title IX and not being able to really say I want to do that when I grow up. When I was going through college, there weren't that many choices back then. But no, I'm very grateful for my parents allowing me to be athletic and wanting to do things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to become a teacher from the very beginning and a coach. I just knew that that was in my blood, and you can tell that from the Hoosiers movie. That was Coach's mission. That was his why. He was going to do something to develop these young men in this program.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's move on to the clicks here. Are there any stereotypes, things that are reinforced? There's definitely a few.
Sure. I mean, politics, right? When you're a coach, everyone thinks they know more than you do. And they're like, no, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, or they're trying to coach the kids, from the stands when you're trying to coach. But I have to say too, I was also a basketball coach in Fairbanks, Alaska. I taught there as well, and I had the privilege and honor of working with the Monroe Catholic High School, even though I was a public school teacher. And so the home of the Rams, and our girls program won the back-to-back state championships back in the 80s when I was coaching there. And the boys had always won the championships, and then the girls had watched their brothers aspire to this level, and then we were able to follow through. And I'm telling you, the same things. Parents think they know better. I had a father run out onto the court one time and tell the girls to start pressing. I said, go sit down. Go sit down, with a lot of grace and humility. But no, I just think the politics of school boards, the community, vocal community leaders who think you should be doing something differently as the coach, or a superintendent, right? So, but I think those were reinforced to me from my perspective.
I don't have anything else to add in that
Okay.
category. I'm going to move on to the next one here.
Yeah.
Class clown. So is there a character that really like steals the show? Maybe doesn't have a major role, but they get a lot of attention in the movie, for the little bit of screen
Mhm.
time that they had. I I, I have actually I had four different ones that I thought about in here, but yeah, is there anyone that you
Let's
guys?
hear them. Let's hear them.
So, one, you brought up Jimmy. He's the
Yeah.
superstar, but he really
Hmm.
doesn't have that much screen time. He has
Mm-mm.
very few lines
Yeah.
actually in the
Right.
movie, like only a handful of lines. He was one of them. I thought Ollie, who was kind of the smaller guy that they kind of
Hmm.
like, he wasn't really like, they had four and a half players,
Right.
and then with his
Hmm.
underhand free throws towards the end.
Hmm.
I thought Shooter too, Dennis Hopper's role, he wasn't
Hmm.
in it a ton, but it got a lot of attention. And then
I was leaning towards that too because he he knew that he had to work hard to be part of the team, and then he didn't change anything that he had the underhand free throws, right? But when he had to make them, he did.
yeah.
So yeah,
All
so
right.
I liked him.
All right, Ollie's a winner. Plus, I'm thinking like when the reporter was interviewing him after he made the two free
Oh
throws, he's like,
yes,
"Oh, never a doubt. I knew I was going to win."
I was making those. They were in.
All right, so the homecoming scene, kind of like the iconic moment, like the big scene of the movie. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, final game, right?
Yeah.
Or are there others that, I mean, just the way they built up that final game, even from like the beginning of like measuring the 15 feet, from the free throw line, 10 feet, just same dimensions. I felt like they just built that up for like a great finale.
Yeah. I can relate to that because as a high school coach, I had to prove to my girls that they could win. And so Elk Grove High School was also
Yeah.
a very competitive high school when around Adley Stevenson time, and they won the state championship. And I actually knew their coach, Marcia. I played a video for my girls to watch so that they could believe that look at these guys put their pants on the same way you do. You tie their shoes same way. You play just as hard. You are just as good as them. And then they had to believe in it. And so I loved that scene when they were in the field house because it is pretty intimidating if you've never played in a very open air stadium like that. So I'll never forget playing against Notre Dame when we were at Notre Dame before the men's game when I
Oh,
was on the Velpo team. There were thousands of people, and it is so totally different when you're going to shoot the ball and make a free throw. But it was also so invigorating to hear the spirit and the cheering. And because in college at that time, a lot of women didn't get the fanfare and all of that. So I just, I think that is so intimidating for our high school kids nowadays because now our field houses hold 3, 4, 5,000 kids in a local high school. And then you go to the Fiserv Forum, like here in Milwaukee, and there's 15 to 18,000 people, or down in University of Wisconsin in Madison, the Kohl Center. So yeah, it was an exciting way to end the movie.
yeah.
The other thing I want to add, it just makes me think about. I was also the superintendent in Brown Deer, and we built a 4-station gym, and this became like field house envy of everybody in the area. It was beautiful. It had 4 courts and everything. We turned the lights off when we start the game, just like they did at the Bucks games, and made a big fanfare. But Kelly Appleby, our boys coach, he put up a picture of the state championship gym in the gym right by the entrance by the locker room to help the students and the kids, the scholar athletes, believe that, hey, this is a place we could maybe go there. And sure enough, they won back-to-back state championships too. So again, it's just putting the foundations in place that help our students believe in hard work, because that's, I think, another thing that Coach Norman Dale really inspired. You got to work hard to play for me, even though he didn't have lots of choices, but he made them work hard to get to where they were. So pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to take this because talking about that last game, I'm gonna go to this next category of realistic or ridiculous in
Mm.
here. Of were there things that like we talked that there's a decent amount here that's pretty realistic. Was
Mhm.
there anything that stood out to you as like very much realistic or very much like that was ridiculous? That would have never happened.
Oh yeah, they nailed it. Because think about if we're when we're in high school, spirit days on Fridays before any team was playing that night. The football team, the girls or boys basketball teams, the volleyball teams. You're dressing up, you're wearing your jerseys, you're proud. I swear it seemed like they wore their jerseys every day at Hickory because they were so into the to the game and the kind of camaraderie it created with the community, with the coaches and the parents. I thought it was interesting that a lot of parents weren't involved because usually you have that booster club group that's doing
Yeah.
everything. They're doing bake sales, they're selling shirts, they're throwing t-shirts out at halftime at the game. They're doing all these things. So the parent role was not in the movie as much as I thought maybe it could have been, but I think it was pretty realistic
Yeah.
with the experiences
Well,
that they
I
showed.
wonder. I mean, hearing you talk about that and knowing your experience as as a superintendent, it was this a sign of the times because I felt like the times when the parents were involved, they were doing what I would say is different than this era, where like he comes back and has his kid apologize. Like when he
Hmm.
wasn't, when he walked out of practice. Like
Yeah.
usually we get the opposite. nowadays, of where the parents more
Right.
backing the kids versus
Mm-hmm.
backing the adults in there. And then yeah, and just like how they weren't really involved other than, yeah, they let them borrow a bus
Mm-hmm.
that they painted red during the season and then
Yes,
painted
I
back
know.
white. But that, I mean, Deb,
Oh,
do you see that dynamic where the parents are, yeah, I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but do you see it where they're supporting the adults, or there's some more kind of adversarial type of relationship?
I think it just goes down to having trusting relationships, and that's what's so key and important, especially when you have to do some very challenging problem solving. But I have found, and my principals have found over the last 15 years or so, parents are real advocates for their kids, which they should be, right? But sometimes they don't believe what we're telling them in the school setting that's going on, and we all want to have respect and work together, but sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. And so I've always tried to share information with grace and humility to parents that don't agree with what maybe a consequence that we have to look at because of a situation. It goes both ways. So I think it's important that people listen to both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. So where the one thing that I in this category, the realistic, um, I'm usually a stickler about like how sports are
Mm,
portrayed in movies.
yeah.
Like they just do a really bad job. And I actually went through this final game when I was rewatching this, and I'm like, man, they show all these sequences of like shots being made and time, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I was like tracking it. I'm like, this was like really good. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like totally staged. It looked like
Hmm.
real basketball. Their scores actually lined up to the end of it, because I'm like, usually they'll have some montage where they score like 10 baskets in a row and they only give them like 4 points on the scoreboard or something. Like they were actually very much lined up.
Hmm.
The only part of it was at the very end. They showed the clock, and the clock was, there was like 12 seconds left, and then you just start counting down, and then you like really count in real time, and he holds the ball
Hmm.
until like he would have ran out of time
Yeah.
on there. But other than that, like it was extremely realistic, for which
Hmm.
is really hard to do in a sports movie.
Yeah, I think it is. But I look at the referees and what they were calling and what was going on in the game. Those were so typical things: stepping on the line, or double dribble, or a foul. At the least desirable moment, right? But yeah, I think it was pretty realistic from a basketball perspective, as a player, as a coach, and just making it exciting, because there's this momentum that you have when you're the underdog and you're trying to come back. And I think we all cheer on the underdogs in our real life. So it was fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. When we work with schools at K-12, it's not just about furniture or design, it's about impact. Our radically student centered approach puts students at the center of every decision. From that first conversation to the final walkthrough, we're focused on creating spaces that actually work for the kids, the teachers, and the community. So if you're looking to do more than just check a box on your next project, let's talk. Visit K12.com. That's KAY-TWELVE.com, and see how we're helping schools transform learning one student at a time. Because at K-12, it's not just about projects and furniture, it's about purpose. All right, so one liner. Was there a one liner? Your favorite quote from the movie?
I'll make it, by Jimmy.
Yeah, I like that.
I'll make it. Good players step up in the moment and they usually deliver. And he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was, both of those were on my list of I'll make it, and then my team's on the floor. I just thought, watching this time, that I just never really picked up as a kid watching it, is when he goes to Shooter's house, Dennis Hopper, and asks him to be a
Yeah.
coach. And he
Yeah.
point, and I just thought it was funny for some reason today,
Mhm.
when I was watching it yesterday, was um like you have to be cleaned up and dressed. And he goes, I got a suit right there, a wingdinger. I was married in that suit.
I know. That was good.
Yeah. So to
Mhm.
me, I'm like, that's,
Mhm.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
the one that did that.
Yeah. I think that also another one liner, and it just showed the humanity of Coach Dale when he told his kids, "I love you guys."
Hmm.
You know, and that's so important for our students to hear, and the kids that we're coaching or the students that we're serving, because there is a lot of love, care, and support that goes along with anything that we're trying to accomplish in life. And to hear it from their coach, I think they probably had not heard that before with the other coaches. So that resonated with me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let me move on to the iPhone effect. Obviously, technology
Yes.
nowadays would make this a very different scenario.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what are the things that you guys are thinking of that would change if this was made in a modern era?
I think, well, first of all, schools would refuse to play in a gym that small. I think. I mean, not having enough room on the end lines and stuff. I think that there wasn't a 3-point line. What if there would have been a
Yeah,
3-point line? Because some of those
yeah,
shots were taken like at half court.
yeah,
so, so I think that would have changed it a lot.
yeah. Yeah, these are interesting dynamics that are not usually in this category, but I agree with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would look at almost like the dynamic of sports right now, of youth sports. That was their only place that they could play was for the school, and now
True.
you see a
True.
lot of like the more elite athletes if they play for their high school, and most of them, basketball is a sport where I do feel like they still play for their school, but sometimes they're
Mm-hmm.
going to different schools that are more, that get some more national attention. But just the dynamic
Sure.
in youth sports where it
Mm-hmm.
used to be all around the school, it's not that way anymore. A lot of times it's almost
Yeah.
like looked down upon of like, I'm not going to play for my school because I'm on this like,
Mm-hmm.
travel club team that does that. Or, like the school team is kind of like, oh, that's my fun area to
Mm-hmm.
play, but that's not
Yeah.
the team that I really care about most.
Mm-hmm. I think about Jimmy, and he was a farmer, helping his family on the farm, but a small town boy with big city dreams. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would he have left the
Yeah,
community?
that's true.
Because that's the charm of what keeps a lot of our kids and families in our smaller communities. So don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's an interesting point.
yeah,
He would have certainly been recruited.
yeah. At least after the state championship run, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Before that,
Definitely.
they may not have known he existed. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So the substitute. If we were going to recast any of the main roles,
Mm.
any one that you think of that would be good.
I have to go with some women. Pat Summitt from Tennessee.
Uh,
She had legacy teams that won many national champions, and then Don Stanley.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be
So
cool. Yeah, my first reaction is like if it was like the same movie, same scene, I'd love to see Bobby Knight in there
oh yeah, throwing chairs
and do that. Yeah.
and
Um,
getting away with it.
but to your point, Deb, like I feel like
yeah.
this would be like I'm actually surprised that there has not
Hmm.
been a remake
Yeah.
on a women's team.
Hmm.
Um, like
Yeah.
it is just like it needs to happen.
It's perfect. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
perfect
I
for
think you
that.
can completely recast that
Hmm.
and do
Yeah.
this. And I'm sure there are some stories like this that you could, if you want to make it more
Hmm.
of a historical based.
Hmm.
Yeah. If not, they can do it on Stevenson High School, on their high school
Exactly.
run,
Yeah.
or your team, Deb. That's what they
I
should do. You
know.
should be pitching your
Really.
story to,
I
yeah,
know.
to be
We got to
part of
get
the
my
movie.
agents.
Yeah.
Great idea, Kevin.
Yeah. All right, we got a few here left, and we're coming up on our time. But
Okay.
hags, like if like the
Mm.
kids writing "Have a great summer" in the yearbook, what would you write? You
Oh my
write a line
gosh.
in the yearbook about this movie.
Oh, so many things. Hoosiers forever. I will never forget this moment ever.
Yeah.
How you write those things, and we had so much fun when we were, winning.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I don't know.
I mean, I'm just trying to think through of like just more of like team or something like that, or just yeah. But I do think like something about Hickory, like
Right.
yeah, just yeah, yeah,
Or
really
something
hit
to
it.
the fact that Coach Dale always talked about, if you put your effort and concentration into playing your game, that you're being the best that you can be. Like, thank you for working so hard and being the best you can be. We're all winners.
Yeah. Where are they now? What like these? I mean, if
Mm,
they graduate, I mean, I guess the downside here is
some of them.
there's
Yeah.
some that probably are not alive from this team in 1951. But
Mm.
where do you think they went on? After like if you went into the future, what do you think they ended up doing?
Well, I think some of them are still at the little diner having breakfast and lunch, supper,
Yeah,
and maybe work in the fields or have their own little hardware store or shop in the town and supporting their kids
yeah,
on the basketball floor.
yeah.
That's where I see some of the
I
players.
I
And
would agree. I feel like almost all the players probably
mhm.
were, yeah, like just local legends in their town. And all right, our last one, the Battle of the Bands. We actually added this in
Mm.
Matt's last episode on School of
Oh.
Rock of some element of music. What was
Mm.
I mean,
Ah,
the I'll just start it out. The only music is really the score of this, and it's
right.
so good.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
Hoosiers music.
Yeah. And it won some awards, I believe, or it's been the movie is in the it's been in some historical preservation film registry or
Oh,
something,
cool.
which I think that's really cool because of its cultural relevance at the time. So that's important. But I also think of the other music they could have played, like "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey, or some of the
Yeah,
modern
yeah,
takes on the music. But you're right, the score was it evoked a lot of emotion, and it seemed to fit
it
perfectly
did.
with the scenes
Yeah,
that were going on.
yeah. Yeah, I felt
So
like it was there really wasn't any other music that I remember, and it was probably good because it just kept
yeah,
like that
yeah.
era like
Mm-hmm.
perfect, like without having
Yeah.
to just like tie it to yeah. Yeah, it's so good. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's like one of those that's like to me like a classic kind of like The
Mm-hmm.
Natural, the baseball movie, like the music
Oh
for
yes.
that, or even like Jurassic Park
um
too. Like, oh,
mm-hmm.
it's just so good. Well, good
That
choice
was
here.
great.
Good choice.
Thank you. I was so inspired. I was disappointed that my movie was already taken, but I'm like, well, then I'm going with the Hoosiers.
What was your
This
other
was
movie choice?
Stand and Deliver,
Oh yeah,
which I
yeah,
always love too. But this is even better because there are so many parallels to my own life, being a coach, an athlete, being a girl Title IX, and then continuing to serve, kids and what we do.
yeah. Well,
So
bringing back to kind of that real world. What's
exactly.
the life of superintendent looking like? What are the like? What's going on in your world now?
Hmm. Well, it's definitely a crazy ride. A lot of roller coasters for sure. We're trying to advocate for funding to support education, not only in our local level, but on the national level, which is really frustrating lately. But yeah, it's we want people to do this job, and it's a very rewarding job. And you just have to remember your why.
Hmm.
It's important that we're here together to serve kids, give them access and opportunities that they don't have, and that's where the joy comes in. And so I tell people it is a very joyful job, but you have to put things in perspective, and you need to sometimes decompress and decompartmentalize to move forward, because we make so many decisions every single day. But you are like the coach of your school district. You're out in the community, you're advocating for kids, you're walking in the parades, you're celebrating all the wins on the football field. So, but it is a really rewarding
Yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah. And I just appreciate too how much you support other things too, like your involvement that you've
Mm-hmm.
gotten the Ed Market with Ed
Yes.
Spaces, and with
Mm-hmm.
your involvement with the AASA over the years, like that. Yeah, just appreciate like how much you're bringing because I know how demanding that superintendent role is.
Mm-hmm.
To then put those other things on top of that, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
yeah,
Well, it's important to have a network, a very strong network that's diverse, so that you can learn and have it influence your leadership role. And so that was one of the reasons, I worked with Ed Market, and we began the Bold Women Collective, which allows women leaders to have a bigger voice and shine bright in their leadership roles too. So I appreciate that.
yeah. Awesome. Well, great discussion. I love talking
Yeah.
Hoosiers. To the listeners, if you like these types of things, hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, our
Mhm.
website. But betterlearningpodcast.com is really the hub for everything. And we get a lot of
Mhm.
suggestions and ideas, or if you would like to be a guest or talk about a certain movie or anything, we really appreciate what you do. There's forms on there that you can go in and fill out because I mean, Matt leads that up, those
Mhm.
discussions every other week. We're having our planning meetings, and we appreciate the input and the insights and the comments and the things that we get. This is great. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.